Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings. Welcome to the Corporate Majlis podcast, where we chat with successful Muslims and learn about their journey in the corporate world. I'm your host Ali, and each week I have a guest from the Muslim community. We discuss their successes, their challenges, and a lot more. In today's episode, I had a chat with Adnan Husaini. He went to law school and worked hard to get his foot in the door with top-tier law firms before changing track and moving into a commercial role as an infrastructure funds manager.
Yeah, so my story is probably a little bit more conventional than the other guests you've interviewed to date. I decided to pursue a study of law after high school. The big reason for that is that I would have been the fourth generation lawyer in my family. So, you could say it was in the blood a little bit, and there was, as my dad would probably not want to admit that there was some undue influence there, but I think hearing the stories that both him and my grandfather used to talk about always drove me to pursue a career in the legal field and kind of replicate some of the stuff they've done, some of their successes. And that really motivated me to pursue law as a career, and I loved it. I was thoroughly involved throughout my university days in mooting competitions, negotiation competitions, and I did pretty well in those, as well as sort of focusing really hard on my studies to give myself the best chance of an opportunity to land a job at a sort of corporate law firm. Having completed my degree, I was lucky enough to get a job at an international top-tier law firm and pursue a career sort of in the private equity space with a big sort of M&A focus. It was a great opportunity for me because it allowed me to work in an area that I found really engaging and across multiple jurisdictions. So I spent the majority of my career in Sydney, but I also worked in Hong Kong for a period of a few months and also got an opportunity to go on secondment to Amsterdam. As I progressed in my career, I started to realize that there's a lot of things that I want to do that are more commercial and less legal. And what I really struggled with, and what a lot of my friends really struggled with that are in the legal industry, is how do you make the leap from being a lawyer to being a commercial person? And to be honest, I probably didn't put as much effort in because I just didn't see a clear path to giving myself that opportunity. And what ended up happening was I thought I may as well go to London, take the well-trodden path of Australian lawyers and just work there for a few years, travel, slightly better pay, and then come home and then, figure out my life following that sort of stint. And, I was lucky enough to get a job at a UK law firm. And I sort of accepted it with a heavy heart, knowing that, I've done some international stints, but I'll be leaving my parents and my family, my friends for a longer period of time this time than sort of the few months. And then on the Monday, after I accepted it on the Friday, I got a call from a random recruiter saying, I've got a role at an infrastructure fund in capital raising. Couldn't really explain to me what it was, and I don't think I fully understood what it was. But alhamdulillah, I had a crack at the interviews. I think there was about 6 all up. And managed to land the role and have never looked back since. Best thing that's ever happened to me. And I think a big part of that I attribute to my parents' du'as, to be honest. They, as soon as I accepted a London offer, were very supportive, but I knew deep down that they kind of wanted me to stay. And I know that they made lots of dua, and I genuinely believe that it was people's dua and support from me that allowed that opportunity to pretty much come out of the blue, and has been the greatest blessing that's happened to me, both from a career perspective, but big sliding doors moment for me as well, because had I gone to London, I wouldn't have met my wife. And now I've been married for a year, and it's been like an amazing journey so far. So that's sort of been my journey to date.
What is infrastructure fund management?
Infrastructure fund management is really, to make it as simple as possible, it's about investing people's money in ideas that matter. And that's really my company's philosophy. So it can be as simple as buying land, putting up a wind farm, and sort of ranges on the spectrum to sort of purchasing airport assets, making operational improvements. Our typical clients tend to be superannuation funds, sovereign wealth funds, and really what they're trying to do is grow Australia and sort of the global infrastructure that's available to try and help society as much as possible. So one thing that our company does, and a lot of fund managers are starting to do, is really focus on ESG, which is environmental, social governance, and that's trying to invest in businesses that are going to make a difference to society. So it can be simple as better energy efficiency outcomes, less reliance on coal and other harmful chemicals for the environment. Sort of the products that we invest in, there's no at all any kind of investments in alcohol or gambling. And we're trying to look at sort of broadening our client base by doing some Sharia compliant investments. And so my role within this business is really to talk to clients, trying to understand what kind of businesses and assets they want to invest in, and try and develop product ideas that will allow them to invest in businesses and assets that they think their underlying investors want. And typically the underlying investors will be URI. Like, I know some of my superannuation money is invested in some of the products that we invest in, and I imagine a lot of other people's superannuation money is invested in these types of assets. So we try to manage that to make sure that there is the sort of growth component there so that everyone is getting good return.
Can I, as an individual, be your client?
Whilst we probably want to open up our investor base to deal with individuals, I don't think as our company, is geared up to do so. So typically what our clients tend to be the superannuation funds, government, sovereign wealth funds. So that could be the Australian government pension schemes, that could be like the Abu Dhabi pension schemes. And what we're trying to do is get a broader base. So we've got a bunch of high net worth aggregators who take capital from a bunch of rich people, combine it into a big investment, and then invest it with us. Our typical sort of investment minimums are about 10 million, give or take.
What qualifications do I require to get into the funds industry?
I think it starts from a young age. So it starts in your university days. One of the big lessons that I took from my dad early on was to try and get relevant sort of work experience in the industry that you want to go into. So for me, it was like at that time, I really wanted to be a lawyer. So it was a case of cold emailing, cold calling, various law firms and asking for them to give me an opportunity to work for them, even if it was for free, just to get a little bit of experience on my CV. That would hopefully open up doors to get into bigger firms or do the kind of work that I wanted to do. So I did that. I used to send out my CVs to law firm HR departments on a regular basis with an updated CV, updated transcript, and a cover letter that I would tailor to that particular firm to really show why I wanted to work there. That was really critical for me. I did some roles that I didn't particularly want to do at some of these places. Like one of the hardest ones was working for a company that was a defendant against people that had asbestos poisoning. So they had admitted liability, and my role was to try to find stuff in their medical history, such as smoking, to try to lower the payment.
That's hilarious.
And genuinely, I did that for a month and a half, and I was like, I can't sleep at night doing this sort of thing. So, but through all of that and emailing lots of people, I was lucky enough to get an interview at another company that landed me a role in a more corporate capacity. So I think one, it's really about expanding your networks, and it's much easier now because we've got LinkedIn. And everyone's sort of roles and titles are freely available. So I would highly recommend reaching out to people who work in the kind of roles that you're interested in, asking them to have a coffee, and then just getting to know what they do so that you have an understanding of whether that's something you want to do. I think what you'll find is when you reach out and you're genuine, people will make the effort to have the coffee with you. And what I've found is people love talking about themselves. And so often it's just a case of listening to their stories and building that rapport, because when the time comes and they're looking to hire someone, they will instantly think of you. They'll go, hey, I met a lovely young man, young woman who had real enthusiasm and a genuine passion for this type of opportunity. I know them. I've connected with them. They're the people that we should reach out to and give them an opportunity to be successful. So I think that opportunity really exists. The second thing I think is, and I wish someone had told me this on my first day of university, but unfortunately grades really do matter, particularly in the kind of industry I am in. A lot of these companies unfortunately have like a WAM screener. So if your average marks are below a certain amount, your application just doesn't even get considered. So it really is like worth putting in the effort at university to give yourself the best possible opportunity. And what benefited me greatly was I found a like-minded group of people that wanted a similar sort of outcome. We're friends, but we sort of pushed each other together and we drove each other to be better. And I think that was an integral component of our collective successes, and each of our individual successes, I think, was heavily influenced by one another. And I found that network, even to this day, has been very, very critical. And one other tip that I found really useful is a few of our developing sort of a support group. So whether that's Islamically, whether that's professionally, I sort of been lucky enough to have kind of both of those. And we try to meet, we probably haven't met as much during the COVID period, but sort of pre-COVID, it was kind of an every 6-week thing. And so from a career perspective, it was literally sit down, bring a gift to the group. So the gift is something that you think will benefit the wider group to have knowledge of. It can be something as simple as, hey, I have a problem, let's work it out together. And having 5 people from different walks of life who have had different experiences in their 5-6 years of professional experience providing you different ideas goes a long way and helps you take that step back if you're facing a problem. So having that support around you makes it so much easier to progress professionally. And likewise, I think spiritually, a similar sort of group where you push each other to grow, to continue on the path that each person is taking individually, I think it helps you go a long way in your journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well as professionally.
Sounds like a cult.
That's definitely fair.
So let's say if I did an engineering degree, do you think I could potentially get into your line of work?
I think so. I think the majority of what we do is really about relationship management. So there'd be a certain amount of upskilling in terms of understanding sort of the financial jargon and an understanding of the industry. But I think that's very much something you can learn on the job. So I would highly recommend people to get involved as long as they enjoy the aspect of talking to people, building relationships, building connections. That's the kind of people that would be successful in this kind of role.
You mentioned when you started, you'd send your resumes in cover letters. Are cover letters still relevant?
I personally think that if I got a CV with a good cover letter, that someone had spent half an hour putting the effort to research the company I work at, the stuff we've done, it goes a long way to differentiating you. So in the graduate applications, you've got to remember that people are reading 600, 700, 1,000 of these, right? And a lot of the time it's the same cookie cutter stuff that everyone has got. So if you've spent that half an hour to an hour researching the company, seeing what they've done recently, and being able to clearly articulate why you want to work there, I think goes a long way to having your application be well received. And it can compensate potentially for lower marks or lack of work experience. That enthusiasm and that effort to go that little bit further than most other people will go a long way.
Personally, I hate cover letters.
I hated writing them as well.
I hate doing them.
Yeah. I had to change one paragraph in mine and it used to take an hour to do.
And the worst thing is for every job, you have to do a new one.
Yeah.
You can't even just have the same one that you can copy paste. It has to be a different one, personalized, tailored to that specific job.
Absolutely. I think as you get more senior, you probably know as well that it's obviously less relevant. Your work experience sort of speaks for itself, and often you probably get approached to join companies because you've got the requisite level of experience. But I think early days, it's one of those things that really can show you as a different person to other people.
Walk me through a typical day.
I think to do that, I'd say I'd take a step back and talk from a high level what our overarching aims are. And really, it's about making clients happy. So the most important thing is understanding what are our clients' objectives, what do they hope to achieve, what sort of investments they want to make. And then it's really about trying to design a product that fits their needs, and then talking to them about it and seeing, what they like about this particular product, what they don't like. So that once you've got the product in place, then really it's about trying to convince them that this is the place where they should invest their money, and often the money of underlying mums and dads, to ensure that they get a good return.
So basically my retirement money is in your hands.
Pretty much. One aspect of it. Yeah, for sure.
What kind of challenges do you face as a Muslim within the industry?
It's getting better for Muslim people, but I think the big challenge that I foresaw in this role was because it was a big client-facing role. My big concerns coming into it was, I think there's going to be an expectation of taking clients out for dinner, and then naturally that involves often for people in the industry having alcohol. So it was one of my concerns, and I didn't want to be the person that got the job and then was like, oh, actually, hey, I don't drink, therefore, and they might see that as a slight on me for not being upfront. So spoke to a friend, and he suggested that I raise it in the interview process and make it clear that this is something I fundamentally believe in. And if this is a critical element of the role, then I'm probably not the right person to take that forward. So I was really upfront with pretty much everyone I met through the interview process to kind of explain my position. And what I found refreshingly great was how assured and respectful everyone was of my principles and what I wanted to do. And at no point did they say you can't be successful in this role just because you don't drink alcohol. So that was quite reassuring for me, knowing that, hey, as long as I have sort of the necessary skill set and the desire to be successful in this, then the opportunity does exist. So that I think that was like the critical challenge in this particular role. Like taking a step back, I think the big thing as I started my career in terms of challenge was really getting comfortable with my identity. I think, for most people growing up here, you kind of have this dual identity almost at times where, you want to fit in like with the broader society, but, you also have your Islamic values and your Islamic principles. And at times there's like a very clear conflict. And it's not the easiest thing to sort of navigate that process. So when I started my career, the people I started with, my graduate intake, that they're your sort of closest confidants, they're your friends that sort of help you through the dark times. A big sort of bonding period for them was like dinners and Friday night drinks to sort of like release steam or whatever. So the hardest part was getting myself comfortable that I can go into these environments, still respect my values, my principles, and then knowing when the right time was to still bond with them and then call it like a night and go home. So that I thought was a big challenge. And then really was the next thing was like knowing that I needed to pray every day and having the confidence to say, give me the opportunity to do so. So I think it genuinely took me maybe 6 to 9 months to get the confidence to say, ask someone, hey, is there a room that I could pray in? Before I just like see if the meeting room's empty. And then if I needed to pray, I'd just go and sort of sneak in there and do it. And then I realized to myself, hey, this is not what I need to be doing. I really should just be asking someone. And most people would facilitate that. And that was great. At my previous company, they did offer me they just pretty much say, get a meeting room, tell the reception, and then reception would make sure no one sort of went into that meeting room. And that worked well. When I joined my new company, they had a very expanding business and not enough meeting rooms. So even though I would still use a meeting room, it was harder to get availability at certain points in time throughout the day. But we recently moved offices, and as part of the design and consulting phase, the Sydney office manager came up to me and said, hey, I know you've been using the meeting rooms. I think we should try and get you a dedicated space that we can sort of call a multi-purpose space. And what they actually ended up doing was building a room in this brand new, fantastic premises that we have that has a lock. It's right next to the disabled toilet, so it's easy to do wudu. You come in, there's a space to keep my jaimas. You can pray. People take phone calls. It's whoever's in there can use it, but it's almost like my own little space at times. So I think having the courage, and it took me time to get the courage to do so, but having the courage to do it was a big challenge, but something that, having done so, I realized that people in Australia particularly are very open to helping you maintain your religious beliefs, and will facilitate this if you ask. I think the challenge is getting the confidence to ask.
Are there a fair few Muslims within your organization, or are you the only one?
I'm the only one. We have a sort of company offsite at the end of every year where it's mandatory, and we sort of go away to, whether it be to Queenstown or Gold Coast, wherever we go. It's just me. So I think a lot of people have worked with Muslim people before, and there's a lot of young people who completely have Muslim friends they completely understand. But definitely some of the more senior people, it's new to them, for sure.
There was a joke that I once heard. I can't remember who the comedian was. He said whenever he saw another brown person, he got the butterflies. Because wait, I thought I was the only one brown person here. Now there's you as well. I kind of have that when I see another Muslim. I'm like, I thought I was the only Muslim here. Now there's another praying buddy. Hey, let's go for Jummah together.
I John, who's our Sydney office manager, was like, hey, this is a great marketing, because we can actually, when we hire more diverse people, we can say, hey, we have a prayer room for you to complete your prayers. So I think it's good. I think it's important for our society to see that all of us are in this together. We're all in this company trying to achieve an aim, but we come from different walks of life. We have different beliefs, but that doesn't impact our sort of shared vision and shared goal. So from that, and diversity gives thought, right? You have diversity of thoughts, diversity of ideas through different experiences that different people have had growing up. So from that perspective, I think it's critical for a business like ours that wants people to challenge the sort of status quo and come up with new ideas where we see opportunities to improve the market.
Mashallah, you're successful, right? You've done really well for yourself. What do you attribute your success to?
I'd say, first and foremost, nothing can be achieved without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessing. And I think my parents have reiterated that from a young age, that whenever an achievement has been happened, yes, you put in the hard work to achieve it, but without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessing, that would never come about. And genuinely, I think it's people's du'as. Touching back to that sliding doors moment in my life, I genuinely believe that it was people's du'as and having faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest of all planners, and that what needs to work out in your best interest will.
If you could go back in time and change something because it didn't work out right, or it was a mistake you've made, what would be that one big thing that you change?
I think it's really having courage to clearly show who I am as a person and my beliefs as a person. I think early days, I wouldn't say I was hiding it, but at no point was I trying to publicly showcase that, hey, I'm Muslim, I'm, what, for lack of a better word, different. And I think that going through the process now, I've realized that we are 1 billion plus people in the world, right? So we should never think that we're different, right? People need to realize that all of us are different, and it's through our differences that makes us great as a community. So I think really what I'd want to tell my past self is embrace who you are, because people will respect you for doing so, and overcoming that fear and lack of confidence to do so.
So when you're not at work, where do I find you?
Probably on a sporting ground, to be honest. I think my biggest passion is probably football. And I just love playing, whether it's indoor, whether it's outdoor, whether it's training. That's what probably gives me the greatest release from everything outside of work. Spending time with my mates, it's largely social. And then having that sort of competitive element. I think when it comes to sport, quite a competitive person. So it brings that side out of me, and it gets it out of my system, I think, to an extent. It has a massive impact on mental health for me, for a number of reasons. I think there's obviously the scientific evidence behind the release of endorphins when you do exercise. So one, I really enjoy that aspect of it. You're running around, getting that sort of natural high, as they sort of say it. But I think the big thing is, because I often play with my friends, the biggest aspect of it is having dinner or spending a little bit of time with them afterwards, catching up with them, making sure those connections are strong. Because when you're struggling with anything, they are often the people that I tend to reach out to most. So having that regular connection with them really helps me in my day-to-day mental health. It sort of puts things into perspective, particularly when there's, we often have first world problems. So just sort of stepping back, stepping away from that, getting your mind off it, talking to them about it, it makes a massive difference to my mental health.
Let's change tracks a little bit. You're working from home these days, right?
Yeah.
How is that going for you?
I personally love it. And I think a big part of that, compared to other people I work with, is not having kids. So life is quite easy in that respect. For me personally, what I've found, and particularly was evident during Ramadan, was a lot of people were like, they're like, I didn't enjoy the fact that we were in lockdown. But for me, I thought that I had one of the most blessed Ramadans in my life, because one, I was never scrambling to pray namaz. I was like prompt every single time. Like, I actually had time to do proper ibadah this year. It wasn't, I need to run home from work and try to run to Taraweeh sort of thing. And, you still had the other stresses. I felt so relaxed, so calm, and I felt like I got so much more out of Ramadan this year, purely because I was working from home. And even though I didn't have the sort of nightly going to pray Taraweeh in the mosque, I was able to pray at home and still, I thought, get a plenty of sort of spiritual healing and enlightenment that I was looking for during the month of Ramadan. And one thing that this year was great for me was, I always used to say, I'm going to do the 6 fast for Shawwal. And for whatever reason, you get through Ramadan, you're back at work, it just never really happened for me. But this year I was like, you know what, I have every opportunity to do this. And alhamdulillah, managed to do all 6 of them. It took me longer than I thought it would. It probably took like 12 days rather than the 8 or so days that I was aiming to do it within. But what was really helpful during all of that period was talking to other people about it. And I was able to encourage a couple of other friends to do something similar. And I think big credit goes to actually my barber, of all people, who said to me, hey, brother, we need to motivate each other to do it. And once we did it, he was like, now that we've done it, we can never go back.
Yeah.
Right? Because we always want to be going forward. We always want to be improving. And so having had that experience, it's going to help, inshallah, for the future years. And I think that working from home will help with all of this. Even if it's 2 days a week or 3 days a week, having that balance in life is really important, because sometimes when you're in the office, there are days where you start to get to the end of like prayer time and meetings come up and it's not that easy. Whereas when you're at home, you can just turn your phone off, turn your laptop off, spend 15 minutes, praise pray sir.
Block off your calendar.
Exactly. And I think that for me has been a game changer, and I think it will be a game changer for a lot of other people. And that I'm very much looking forward to continuing to do, particularly Jummah. Like, I don't mind going into the city and praying, but it's always hard. Like, you might just be running 5 minutes late, and then the Jamaat gets packed, right?
It's always so rushed in the city. You don't get to enjoy it, and the khutbahs are so quick and fast.
Yeah,
and,
we've got to fit like 3 salats in.
And all you're thinking about is that I have a meeting up next.
Exactly.
Am I going to make it back in time?
Exactly. And I think that having that working from home time, it's super easy to just particularly when you put a block in for 2 hours, go to Jummah, come back. No one puts anything in your diary then. You have enough time. You sort of get that Friday spiritual refresher for the week, and then you head into the weekend, I think, on a positive note. So for me personally, love working from home, and I hope it continues going forward.
Do you think we'll ever return to the way we worked in the offices after this whole pandemic settles down?
I certainly hope not. And look, I think some of the people like the FaceTime, and there's certain industries where that's, I think, comes with the work that you do. But I think the companies that we all want to work for, and they're the ones that will be successful, are the ones that are going to embrace change, and the ones that are going to want to listen to their staff and sort of understand what they want to do. And I think, having spoken to the majority of my peers, they all want that balance in their life.
How do you continually improve yourself, be that professionally or Islamically?
For me personally, I like to read as much as I can. So I try to, within the course of a week, learn new things. So it can be as simple as reading something on Wikipedia and broadening your knowledge. All of that sort of helps your sort of overall growth and development. I think what I learned, particularly in the last few years, is that each of us is on a different sort of journey, whether that's professionally, whether that's spiritually. I think the main thing is to keep going, to not lose sight of where you want to end up. And even if it's small steps early, I think, particularly from a religious standpoint, one of the things that my dad always used to say to me was, make just the niyyah to go closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you'll see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy. The hardest bit is making the intention to go on that path. And I think likewise with anything professionally related too, you just have to try to do something, and you'll see that you're capable of doing so much. And a lot of people will say, oh, I'm time poor. But when we actually get to the crux of it, it's because we don't often, and myself included, there are times where you don't just utilize your time efficiently. And once you learn to do that, you realize, actually, I have so much time in the day to pursue the kinds of things that I should be pursuing and want to be pursuing. So really, for me, it's just continually refreshing what I want to get out, whether it's Islamically, whether it's professionally, just revisiting those goals and then slowly working towards them.
What are your tips for a successful career and a successful life?
I'm still figuring it out myself, but what I'll try to share what I've learned and what has helped me improve and try to get towards the more contentment that I think we all sort of look for. I think the first thing that I think is critical is really being true to yourself. So really trying to figure out who you are as a person, what your personal goals are, what your personal beliefs are, really understanding them, and then working towards them. So even if it's small steps, but really from a career perspective, do something that makes you happy, right? Don't go and chase the dollars, chase barakah, right? And that often comes from you being content and being happy and pursuing a career that you enjoy and want to make a difference in. And likewise, from a spiritual and Islamic point of view, take that journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It can be at a different pace to everyone. It can be slower, it can be faster, but just keep moving on that journey and you'll see the sort of consistent improvement. So I see that people are often in a sort of competition to get as fast as possible to it. I think just take a step back. Forget about every single other person around you. Don't compare yourself. I know it's hard to do because we're humans, we tend to do that. What I've learned to do is be happy for your brothers and sisters who are doing better. Help your brothers and sisters that think they're doing not as good as you. But really just focus on yourself, set your goals and slowly work towards them. And I've found, particularly from an Islamic point of view, the more I try, the easier it becomes. And I keep thinking about what my parents have always said to me around just making the intention and putting in the effort, and it just gets easier. And you realize how much opportunity and how much time you actually have to do so. The other thing that I've learned a lot, and particularly I think a lot from my grandfather, is being grateful. I think that's a hard thing to do. But if the people that are listening to this and the people that are in Australia particularly, we are so blessed. It's incomprehensible, right? Alhamdulillah, we have food on our tables. We have a roof over our heads. We are in a better position than the majority of the world. And it's what you really need to do is just be grateful that you have all that and not think just, getting a bit bogged down in, I need to get this next thing. Because once you get that next thing, then it's on to the next thing. So really and I think true contentment comes from having that gratefulness that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me, that's what is in my risk. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest of all planners, and your path is set out for you. So you can either be not so content and keep trying to fight the tide and not be happy, or you can be grateful. And I think that your state of mind will be different. Everything becomes easier and you have a much more positive outlook on life.
You know, the Prophet ﷺ said, if Allah was to give man gold worth Mount Uhud, he'd ask for another one. Just never happy.
No. And you see that, right? Like every time someone gets something, they want the next thing. And I think that true contentment really comes from being comfortable in who you are, having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That I think those are the key ingredients, I think, and that's something I'm still working on and trying to get better at. And all of the things I've said, they're things that I'm trying to work on so that I get that as much contentment as possible in my life as well.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Jazakallah khair for tuning in and giving us your time. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.